How much access is too much access? The principle of least privilege might be your organization's last line of defense. But how do you actually put it into practice? Stay tuned, because in this video, we're uncovering the simple steps to implementing secure role-based controls using Microsoft Entra roles. Imagine accidentally giving a user more permissions than they need. It happens all the time and can open the door to catastrophic errors or even breaches. Whether you're new to Microsoft Entra or want to refine your policies, you're about to learn exactly how to lock down permissions with precision. What are Microsoft Entra roles based? Microsoft Entra roles are at the heart of managing secure access to resources within the Microsoft Entra environment. These roles define what actions a user can perform, serving as a system of permissions that ensure users have access to only the resources they need to perform their jobs. But why does this matter for security? One of the biggest risks in access management is over-permissioning, giving users more access than they should have. This not only increases the attack surface for potential breaches, but also raises operational risks, such as accidental changes to critical configurations. Here's an example to think about. Imagine a junior admin is assigned a high-level role such as global administrator without truly needing it. While performing routine tasks, they mistakenly delete essential user accounts or a critical application. This error disrupts operations and could jeopardize your organization's data. Now, let's take this a step further. What if a malicious actor gains access to this over-permissioned account? Suddenly, your organization is at serious risk of a security breach. The consequences of poor role assignment are clear: security vulnerabilities, operational disruptions, and an ongoing struggle to maintain order in a poorly managed system. This is where role-based access control, or RBAC, comes in. RBAC is a framework that assigns users to roles based on their specific needs and responsibilities. It ensures that users have the permissions required to perform their tasks, but nothing more. This is often referred to as the principle of least privilege. For Microsoft Entra, roles are the mechanism through which RBAC is implemented, resulting in a more secure and manageable environment. Microsoft Entra roles are broadly categorized into two types: built-in roles and custom roles. Built-in roles consist of predefined permissions designed for common tasks. For example, the user administrator role allows a user to manage accounts, reset passwords, and monitor service health, while the global administrator role has full access to all administrative features. These built-in roles are solid options for standard needs, but they may not always align perfectly with the specific requirements of your organization. This is where custom roles shine. Custom roles give your organization the flexibility to tailor permissions precisely to your needs. For instance, you might need a role that grants an IT technician the ability to reset passwords, but restricts access to higher-level administrative functions. With custom roles, this level of granularity is possible. However, it's important to note that creating and managing custom roles requires a Microsoft Entra ID Premium P1 or P2 license, so organizations must take licensing considerations into account when utilizing this feature. The extra cost is well worth it for organizations aiming to implement least privilege on a more detailed level. Built-in and custom roles each have distinct benefits, and a well-thought-out combination of the two can help you maintain a secure and efficient environment. Built-in roles provide simplicity and ease of deployment, while custom roles offer the flexibility to address unique use cases. The key is to use these tools strategically, ensuring that roles are aligned with your organization's structure and objectives. Understanding that poorly assigned roles can lead to severe problems underscores just how foundational roles are to secure access management. This is why Microsoft Entra roles play a critical role in balancing productivity with security. When implemented effectively, they create an environment where users can perform their tasks without introducing unnecessary risk. On the flip side, failing to manage roles properly can be detrimental, even in smaller setups, where a single mistake can have widespread consequences. So how do we organize and structure these roles to ensure precise access control? Effective role assignment starts with understanding how roles are categorized based on their purpose and scope. This categorization provides clarity and ensures that permissions are allocated in a way that both simplifies management and strengthens security. Let's break it down in the next section. Understanding role categories. We've all been there, trying to assign roles and permissions, only to feel overwhelmed by all the options. Which role is the right one? What's the difference between these overlapping categories? Misunderstanding these questions can lead to over-permissioning or mismanagement, leaving your system vulnerable. To make sense of the chaos, Microsoft Entra roles are grouped into 3 categories: Microsoft Entra-specific roles, service-specific roles, and cross-service roles. Each of these categories has a distinct purpose, and understanding these differences is crucial for effective role management. Let's start with the first category, Microsoft Entra-specific roles. These roles are designed to manage resources directly within the Microsoft Entra ID environment. You can think of them as tools specifically for handling the directory itself, things like user accounts, groups, and identity-related resources. Some examples of Microsoft Entra-specific roles include the user administrator, who manages all aspects of user accounts and groups, and the application administrator, who oversees application registrations and enterprise applications. There's also the Groups Administrator, responsible for group settings and memberships. These roles are tightly focused on identity and access management, ensuring that directory resources are secure and properly maintained. They are essential when it comes to keeping your identity infrastructure organized and secure. The next category is service-specific roles. As the name suggests, these roles are tied to one specific service within the broader Microsoft ecosystem, like managing Microsoft 365 components. For example, the Exchange Administrator manages settings and configurations for Exchange Online, while the SharePoint Administrator focuses solely on SharePoint Online. Then you have the Teams Administrator, responsible for managing settings and policies specifically for Microsoft Teams. There's also the Intune Administrator, who handles mobile device management and application protection policies. These roles are highly specific because they deal with just one service at a time. They allow administrators to fine-tune their control over individual applications without affecting other parts of the system. This level of granularity is helpful when you want to isolate responsibilities and ensure service-specific expertise. Finally, we have cross-service roles. These roles are unique because they span multiple services across the Microsoft ecosystem and are particularly useful for security and compliance-related tasks. Cross-service roles are designed to provide a holistic view and unified control over several areas. For example, the Security Administrator role gives access to multiple security services like Microsoft Defender for cloud apps and Microsoft Purview. Similarly, the Compliance Administrator role provides access to compliance features across different Microsoft 365 services, such as the Compliance Center, Exchange, and SharePoint. These roles are powerful because they enable administrators to manage tasks that require coordination across several platforms. They are especially valuable for organizations prioritizing a comprehensive approach to security and compliance. So why do these categories matter? Misusing roles or assigning them without considering their purpose can lead to significant issues. Think of it like this. If roles were tools in a toolbox, Microsoft Entra-specific roles would be the screwdrivers, essential for foundational tasks like building and maintaining structures. Service-specific roles would be like wrenches, tailored for handling specific parts of a machine. Cross-service roles, on the other hand, would be the multi-tools, versatile and designed to handle situations that require a broader set of capabilities. Using the wrong tool for the job not only makes your work harder, but could also lead to damage. Assigning a user a cross-service role like Security Administrator, when they only need to manage user accounts, would expose them to unnecessary security settings, increasing the risk of accidental misconfigurations, or worse, security breaches. Similarly, attempting to perform cross-service tasks using only service-specific roles could become inefficient, with fragmented responsibilities creating unnecessary complexity. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine an organization where an administrator is responsible for managing mailboxes in Exchange Online and configuring file sharing in SharePoint Online. If they are assigned only the Exchange Administrator role, they won't be able to handle SharePoint tasks without obtaining a second role, creating workflow inefficiencies. Conversely, assigning them a cross-service role such as Global Administrator might grant too many permissions, leaving room for unintentional or even malicious activity. Proper categorization ensures that users have the permissions they need, no more, no less. This careful assignment supports the principle of least privilege, which is critical for minimizing risks. The point of these categories is to simplify role management while enhancing security. When you clearly understand the differences between Microsoft Entra-specific roles, service-specific roles, and cross-service roles, assigning permissions becomes a more structured and controlled process. Each role has its own purpose, so there's no need to overcomplicate things by assigning roles that don't fit the user's actual responsibilities. It's a modular system designed to balance security and usability. To make role management even more effective, it's essential to pair role assignments with proper policy controls. For example, combining a cross-service role with conditional access policies can ensure that even users with broader permissions can only access resources under specific conditions, like being on a secure device or within a trusted network. This approach provides an additional layer of protection, reinforcing the principle of least privilege even for employees in more comprehensive roles. Now that you have a better understanding of how Microsoft Entra roles are categorized, it's clear why mastering these categories is key to avoiding role mismanagement. Assigning roles based on categories allows you to allocate permissions in a way that balances security, usability, and operational efficiency. It eliminates the guesswork that often leads to over-permissioning or gaps in access controls. So, how do you take this knowledge and put it into action effectively? Learning the categories is a great start, but understanding how to assign roles while following security best practices is the next step. Role assignment isn't just about picking a role, it's about being deliberate in aligning permissions with business needs while reducing risks. This involves a process that considers both the role categories we've explored and the specific tasks or responsibilities of each user. This brings us to an important question. How can we securely implement these roles in a way that supports the principle of least privilege without disrupting productivity? By following a structured and thoughtful approach, role assignment can enhance both security and efficiency. In the next section, we'll explore exactly what that step-by-step process looks like for assigning Microsoft Entra roles. Stay tuned as we move from theory to practice. How RBAC works in Microsoft Entra. Role-based access control, or RBAC, might sound like another overly technical framework, but in reality, it's a straightforward and powerful method for managing how access is granted within systems like Microsoft Entra. At its core, RBAC is about answering a simple question: what does this person need to do their job? By aligning user permissions with specific roles, RBAC creates a structured framework that ensures people have exactly the access they need. No more, no less. The principle behind RBAC is simple. Roles are assigned to users based on their responsibilities. These roles contain specific permissions that define what actions the user can or cannot perform. This approach isn't just about organization, it's essential for maintaining security while allowing users to stay productive. Without RBAC, it becomes much easier for users to end up with far too many permissions, which can create major security risks like unauthorized access or even accidental data loss. Here's the challenge. Organizations often struggle to find the balance between granting too much access, which creates vulnerabilities, and restricting access too much, which can disrupt productivity. For example, an employee in the HR department might need access to manage user profiles and reset passwords. If they're not given enough access, they'll have to spend extra time waiting for IT to handle tasks they could easily do themselves. On the other hand, if you assign them a role with overly broad permissions like global administrator, they suddenly have access to settings and resources far beyond their actual responsibilities. Too little access slows things down. Too much access creates risks. This is the exact problem RBAC is designed to solve. The key to RBAC isn't just assigning permissions, it's following the principle of least privilege. This principle ensures that users only have the minimum level of access necessary to perform their jobs. By limiting permissions in this way, organizations reduce the risk of data breaches, accidental deletions, and unauthorized actions. It's a proactive security measure that also eliminates much of the confusion and inefficiency of ad hoc permission assignments. For Microsoft Entra in particular, the least privilege principle provides a way to enforce security without micromanaging every individual user or admin. So how does RBAC translate into Microsoft Entra? In this system, roles are used to manage permissions at two main levels: directory level and resource level. Directory level roles allow for control over identity resources such as users, groups, and applications within the Microsoft Entra directory. For example, the user administrator role is one of the most frequently utilized roles. It allows users to create and manage accounts, reset passwords, and handle basic group memberships, tasks that are common for IT administrators responsible for onboarding and supporting employees. But importantly, this role doesn't grant broader permissions like access to sensitive security settings or configuration controls. This targeted role design ensures that users can only manage what they actually need to handle, reducing risks and improving oversight. At the resource level, roles are configured to allow or restrict access to specific services or applications. For instance, a manager of a cloud app might be granted application administrator permissions, allowing them to manage settings for that app, but restricting anything outside that scope. Whether at the directory or resource level, RBAC ensures that permissions match the tasks at hand. By doing this, Microsoft Entra leverages RBAC principles to create a structured, risk-minimized environment for managing access. It's important to note that Microsoft Entra RBAC is distinct from Azure RBAC. While both systems are built on the concept of role-based access control, they focus on different areas of responsibility within the Microsoft ecosystem. Microsoft Entra RBAC is designed specifically for managing identity resources. Think users, groups, and applications. It covers everything directly associated with identity and access management within the directory. Azure RBAC, on the other hand, manages access to Azure resources like virtual machines, storage accounts, or databases. They are separate systems with similar principles but entirely different scopes and operational purposes. Understanding the boundaries between these systems is critical. For instance, assigning a user an identity role in Microsoft Entra won't have any impact on their access to Azure subscriptions or resources. Similarly, roles created or applied within Azure RBAC don't affect permissions for managing users and groups in Microsoft Entra. This separation ensures clarity in managing permissions and reduces the chance of accidental over-permissioning across unrelated resources. Let's bring this into focus with an example. Imagine you're managing access for a group of help desk employees in your organization. These employees need the ability to reset user passwords and unlock accounts, essentially standard troubleshooting tasks. In Microsoft Entra, you could assign them the password administrator role, which is purpose-built for this exact scenario. It grants them the ability to perform password resets without giving access to broader administrative functions. Now compare that to assigning these users the global administrator role. Doing so would give them access to everything, including sensitive configurations and high-level security policies, way beyond what's necessary for their job. As you can see, using RBAC properly ensures that each role is aligned with its intended responsibilities, providing just enough access to get the job done while maintaining strong security. This targeted approach isn't just about risk reduction, it's also about maximizing efficiency. When users have clearly defined roles, it eliminates the need for IT administrators to constantly intervene to fix permission issues. Changes are made at the role level and flow down to all the users assigned to that role. This centralized management structure saves time, reduces mistakes, and makes scaling user access easier as organizations grow. One of the standout benefits of RBAC is its ability to reduce human error. Without a structured framework like RBAC, access is often assigned manually, creating inconsistencies and gaps that can go unnoticed. For example, imagine an employee transfers to another department, but their permissions aren't updated. This oversight could allow unauthorized access to resources unrelated to their new role. With RBAC, this problem is minimized because permissions are tied to roles, not individuals. Changing a user's assigned role automatically updates their permissions. Another advantage of RBAC is its ability to simplify auditing. By keeping permissions centralized within roles, reviewing access becomes more manageable. Instead of having to evaluate each individual's permissions, you can focus on the roles themselves and the users assigned to those roles. This makes it easier to identify potential risks and eliminate unnecessary access. But as clear and structured as RBAC is, not all roles meet every organization's needs straight out of the box. That's why Microsoft Entra provides both built-in roles and the option for custom roles, which we'll explore in the next section. Built-in roles offer predefined sets of permissions for common scenarios, while custom roles allow for finely tuned configurations tailored to your organization's specific requirements. Understanding the difference between these two types of roles and how to use them effectively is the next step in mastering RBAC. The key takeaway here is that RBAC isn't about overcomplicating access management. It's about simplifying it through structure. By assigning roles based on actual organizational needs and tying them to specific permissions, RBAC creates a secure, efficient, and scalable system for managing access. It's foundational for maintaining both security and productivity in environments like Microsoft Entra. But not all roles are created equal. Let's dive into built-in and custom roles next. Built-in roles versus custom roles. Built-in roles in Microsoft Entra come prepackaged with permissions designed to handle common tasks, making them a quick, straightforward option for managing access. These roles simplify the process of assigning permissions because they are predefined and standardized with fixed sets of permissions. For instance, roles like Global Administrator grant full access to all administrative features, while others like User Administrator are more focused, enabling the management of user accounts, group memberships, and basic password resets. This setup is especially helpful for organizations that want a plug-and-play solution for common administrative tasks without needing to configure anything custom. But here's the question. Are built-in roles enough for every organization? While they're excellent for handling general tasks, there's a clear limitation. They lack flexibility. Each built-in role comes with a predefined set of permissions, and these cannot be altered. What if your organization needs permissions that fall into a gray area, or need to trim permissions down even more for a particular user's tasks? In those cases, built-in roles might not meet the specific requirements of your business operations. For example, tasks like enabling password resets for certain users without granting broader administrative access require more granular permission control. Unfortunately, built-in roles aren't designed for this level of customization. This is where custom roles come into play. Microsoft Entra allows you to create custom roles by defining specific permissions tailored to your organization's needs. Custom roles extend flexibility far beyond what built-in roles offer. Let's take a scenario to see how this works. Imagine your organization wants to grant a help desk employee the ability to reset passwords but restrict their ability to access sensitive areas like application management or group memberships. With a custom role, you can define these permissions precisely. You select the exact permissions required for that function, password resets only, and assign them to the employee, ensuring they can perform their work without being exposed to risks associated with unnecessary access. To create a custom role, you start by defining the role itself. This involves selecting a specific set of permissions from Microsoft Entra's predefined list. Think of it like building a role tailored to a user's exact responsibilities. After defining the permissions, you assign the role to a specific user or group. This targeted approach ensures that permissions are scoped appropriately. And remember, custom roles can also be scoped to a specific resource, like an application. For instance, you could create a custom role that allows an IT staff member to manage the Contoso Expenses app, but grants no access to any other organizational resources. Scoping roles narrowly this way not only adheres to the principle of least privilege, but also helps limit the impact of misuse or error. However, with this flexibility comes a trade-off. Custom roles demand thoughtful planning and a deep understanding of your organization's security and operational needs. While they offer fine-grained control, creating overly specific roles can lead to an overcomplicated management system. Overdefining roles, where each slight variation in responsibility results in a new role, can make your access system hard to manage in the long run. Because of this, custom roles require careful consideration to ensure the benefits of flexibility do not outweigh the simplicity that makes access management scalable. Another consideration when using custom roles is the licensing requirement. Creating and using custom roles in Microsoft Entra requires a premium P1 or P2 license. This requirement might not be an issue for many organizations already operating with these licenses, but for others, it's an extra cost to factor into their decision-making. The licensing cost reflects the additional control and features that custom roles bring to the table, positioning custom roles as an advanced tool for organizations that need higher levels of permission granularity. Keep in mind that this is a trade-off many organizations are willing to make because it provides a tailored solution for meeting compliance and operational efficiency goals. Let's take a closer look at the trade-offs between built-in roles and custom roles. Built-in roles are easy to use out of the box, making them ideal for organizations that want to quickly assign permissions for general administrative tasks. They're low maintenance and cover a wide range of functionality, such as identity management, application administration, and service-related configurations. However, due to their fixed permissions, they might not cover every scenario, especially when it comes to hybrid or highly specialized environments. On the other hand, custom roles offer flexibility and precision, but they come with added complexity. The process of creating custom roles requires a deliberate understanding of what users need to accomplish, the security implications of those permissions, and how the custom role will fit into the broader role hierarchy in Microsoft Entra. In addition to this, scoping custom roles appropriately is another challenge that requires attention. While you can assign custom roles broadly across the tenant, you also have the option to assign them at the object level. This level of detail makes custom roles a powerful tool for adhering to the principle of least privilege, but increases the administrative effort required to set them up and maintain them effectively. For example, let's say your organization has multiple user groups with varying access needs for the same resource. Some users may only require read access, while others need permissions to edit or configure it. With a custom role, you can design the permissions to meet these exact needs without over-permissioning users. However, while you gain this granularity, every new custom role requires updates as your organization evolves, whether it's adding new resources, shifting job roles, or revising organizational policies. This shows the trade-off. What you gain in flexibility, you invest in ongoing maintenance and planning. Overall, Microsoft Entra gives organizations the option to balance simplicity and flexibility. Built-in roles act as general-purpose solutions meant to address the majority of standard access needs. For more sophisticated or niche cases, custom roles can fill those gaps by offering tailored permissions. It's not a question of choosing one over the other. Both have their place, depending on your organization's access management strategy. Combining built-in roles for standard use cases with custom roles for specialized needs creates a comprehensive access system that's both efficient and secure. Now that we've covered how built-in and custom roles differ, let's boil it down to a simple takeaway. Built-in roles provide simplicity and quick deployment, while custom roles enable precision and control. Which option you use will depend on your organization's needs, but together they can serve as complementary tools in building a secure, structured access management system. Remember, it's all about aligning roles with organizational goals, technical requirements, and compliance standards. So, how do we assign the right roles step by step? Let's walk through the process. Step by step. Assigning Microsoft Entra roles. Assigning roles in Microsoft Entra may sound straightforward, but ensuring they are done correctly requires a structured approach. Without a clear workflow, it becomes easy to over-assign permissions, create unnecessary security risks, or cause inefficiencies for users. That's why following a deliberate step-by-step process is crucial. By carefully evaluating the needs of users and following security best practices such as the principle of least privilege, organizations can achieve a balance between user productivity and system security. This process involves 4 main steps: identifying the need, selecting the appropriate role, assigning it effectively, and regularly reviewing roles for continued alignment and security. The very first step is to identify the specific need. What does the user actually need to do within the system? What permissions are required for them to perform their job without unnecessary access? Answering these questions requires a full understanding of the user's role in the organization and their day-to-day tasks. For example, does the user need to reset other people's passwords? Do they need access to manage applications, or are they simply responsible for monitoring system performance? The goal here is to focus on tasks rather than imagining what they might need access to down the line. This is essential to prevent what's called over-permissioning, where users are granted unnecessary permissions that could later expose the system to threats or result in mistakes like accidental changes to configurations. Consider this scenario. A help desk staff member primarily resolves password-related issues for end users. In this case, they only need the ability to perform password resets and unlock accounts. They do not need broader access to modify applications, create new users, or configure more advanced settings. Becoming too general here can result in an employee having access to areas they'll never touch, increasing security risks without actually benefiting productivity. Identifying these specific needs lays the foundation for a secure access strategy. Once you know the user's precise needs, the next step is selecting the appropriate role. In Microsoft Entra, this often means deciding between a built-in role or a custom role based on those identified requirements. For standard, widely shared tasks like user account administration or managing certain services, built-in roles often provide all the required permissions right out of the box. For example, the user administrator built-in role includes permissions needed to manage user accounts and basic group memberships. It's well suited for IT staff who onboard new employees or troubleshoot account-related issues. These roles are predefined, meaning you know exactly what is included in terms of permissions, which minimizes the guesswork. But what happens if the user's role is more specialized? This is where custom roles step into the equation, offering flexibility to tailor permissions to exactly match the user's scope of responsibilities. Custom roles allow you to build a role from the ground up, selecting only the permissions necessary to fulfill the need you identified in the first step. For example, if a user needs to manage a single application but shouldn't have access to other resources or settings, you can define a custom role that does exactly that. This precision is especially important for organizations with unique responsibilities or that heavily adhere to compliance requirements. However, keep in mind that setting up custom roles requires a Microsoft Entra Premium P1 or P2 license, so it's essential to balance the cost of that capability against your organization's specific requirements. Imagine another example. Your organization has a contractor who only requires access to monitor application logs for a specific dashboard. Assigning them a broad built-in role with permissions to perform actions like creating users or modifying directory settings would not only violate the principle of least privilege, but it could also result in accidental changes or expose other potentially sensitive parts of Microsoft Entra. In this case, creating a custom role limited to log viewing ensures both usability and security. After selecting the role, it's time for step 3, assigning the role to either a user or a group. Here, the principle of least privilege must remain central. This principle dictates that users should receive the smallest amount of access necessary to perform their jobs, but no more. Assigning roles to users is the most straightforward option when providing access to individuals. However, for teams or departments performing similar tasks, assigning a role to a group can save significant time and effort. When a new team member joins, they inherit the group's role automatically, reducing administrative effort and ensuring consistency. For instance, let's revisit the help desk staff example. Instead of assigning the password administrator role to individual staff members, one at a time, you could assign it to a group named Help Desk Team. This group-based assignment ensures that any team member added to or removed from the group automatically gains or loses the associated permissions. It's efficient, reduces administrative overhead, and ensures permissions stay aligned with team membership. When making these assignments, you should also carefully consider scoping. Scoping is the practice of limiting the scope of a role to a specific resource, such as a particular application or directory. Instead of granting someone permissions across the entire organization, narrowing their access to only what's relevant mitigates risks. For example, a user administrator could be scoped to manage users in a specific organizational unit, such as a department, rather than having free range to manage all users across the organization. This scoping ensures that permissions remain tightly aligned with actual responsibilities, adhering to the least privilege principle more effectively. The final step, and arguably one of the most important, is regularly reviewing and auditing role assignments. Access needs change over time. Employees shift roles, contractors complete projects, departments reorganize, and new applications are introduced. Without routine checks, it's easy for permissions to become outdated or, worse, misaligned. A former project manager may still have access to sensitive data months after transitioning to a new role. This creates a security liability the organization may not even be aware of. Regular audits identify these gaps and address them proactively. Microsoft Entra provides tools such as access reviews, to support this process. These tools allow administrators to monitor permissions, recertify that users still need access, and remove unnecessary roles as needed. For example, during a quarterly audit, administrators can review everyone assigned to the application administrator role. If someone who once managed applications has moved to a different role, they can immediately revoke the permissions to prevent misuse. With access reviews, organizations can automate many of these checks, ensuring thorough oversight without manual effort, taking up too much operational bandwidth. Auditing also covers whether assigned permissions are being used. Sometimes users are granted access but never actually require it. For instance, the role may have been issued during onboarding just in case. If it turns out those permissions weren't used over a set period, it's a red flag that the permissions are unnecessary and should be revoked. Let's put this into perspective with a common example. A user administrator role enables a user to manage all aspects of user accounts within the directory. Assigning this role to a new HR associate who manages onboarding makes sense at first. Over time, their responsibilities might shift, and they may no longer require access to user management tasks. By conducting routine audits or access reviews, you can revoke these permissions once they're no longer necessary, reducing the organization's attack surface and compliance risk. This way, you ensure security policies remain in line with evolving responsibilities. Following this structured process, identifying the need, selecting the right role, assigning it correctly, and regularly reviewing access will help prevent common issues like over-permissioning, operational inefficiencies, and even potential breaches. It's a practical, repeatable workflow that creates stronger security postures without burdening IT or confusing end users. Each step reinforces the principle of least privilege, making sure that permissions align as closely as possible to a user's responsibilities without leaving open unnecessary risk. By using Microsoft Entra tools like built-in role templates, custom role creation, group-based assignments, and access reviews, you can layer even more safeguards into this process. These tools ensure that roles are applied thoughtfully and maintained securely over time. Whether you're managing a small team or overseeing complex enterprise-level environments, this structured approach helps maintain both security and efficiency. But what if roles are assigned improperly? What happens when this process breaks down? Mismanagement of roles can create serious vulnerabilities, from operational disruption to outright data breaches. In the next section, we'll explore these risks, diving into the consequences of role mismanagement and how you can use tools like conditional access policies to prevent them. Let's uncover those risks. Risks of improper role assignments. What happens when roles go wrong? Let's start with a scenario. Imagine an organization assigns a global administrator role to a staff member who only needs to manage user accounts. This role comes with sweeping permissions, including the ability to modify security settings, delete resources, and access sensitive data across the entire organization. One day, that employee accidentally misconfigures a critical security setting, or worse, their account is compromised by a malicious actor. Now, someone with harmful intent has access to the organization's most sensitive resources and the ability to wreak havoc. This is the kind of security nightmare that improper role assignments can create. Misassigning roles can lead to several major risks, with the first being over-permissioning. When users are granted excessive permissions, they have access to systems and resources that they don't need for their job. This creates an unnecessary attack surface for potential breaches. The more permissions a user has, the more valuable their account becomes to a malicious actor. For example, an attacker gaining access to an overly permissioned account may use it to access confidential data, disable security mechanisms, or disrupt critical operations by deleting essential configurations. It's important to remember that most data breaches don't happen because of sophisticated exploits. They happen because attackers leverage misconfigured accounts or unnecessary permissions to their advantage. Another risk of improper role assignments lies in the lack of access control. When organizations don't establish proper boundaries for permissions, it becomes difficult to track which users have access to specific resources and why. This can lead to unintentional operational failures. For instance, someone with permissions they shouldn't have might inadvertently delete a critical file or alter a system configuration, causing downtime or inaccurate results. Operational challenges like this can disrupt workflows and lead to extended recovery efforts, something that affects not just IT systems but other parts of the business as well. Imagine the productivity disruption when entire teams are locked out of applications or when customer data is mistakenly deleted due to improper access controls. Here's a real-world example that might feel all too familiar. An external contractor is brought in to work on an organization's IT systems. To speed up the onboarding process, the contractor is assigned a cross-service role that allows them to make changes across multiple systems. Once the project is finished, the contractor still has permissions to access these systems, which could later be exploited if access isn't revoked. Worse yet, if the contractor's account is compromised, the attacker now has administrative access to multiple critical services, access the contractor never actually needed. This is a direct conflict with the principle of least privilege, which states that users should only have the access necessary to perform their job tasks and nothing more. Improper role assignments also present ongoing administrative challenges. Over time, as employees change roles, projects are completed, and systems are updated, outdated role assignments can accumulate. Without consistent reviews, users may continue to hold permissions they no longer need. This creates what's known as permission creep, where users progressively collect more permissions than necessary over time. Not only does this make tracking and managing permissions more difficult, but it also introduces new risks. For example, an employee who started in an IT support role might move to a less technical position, but still retain administrative privileges from their previous role. This opens the door to potential accidents or malicious activity, either from the employee or if their account becomes compromised. There's also an indirect cost to improper role assignments, reduced trust. Data breaches and operational disruptions caused by excess permissions can harm customer trust and damage an organization's reputation. When sensitive data is stolen or systems are disrupted, it's difficult to explain to customers or stakeholders that the root cause was simply a failure to assign roles properly. This reputational damage can take years to mend. So how do you mitigate these risks? Conditional access policies in Microsoft Entra can be a powerful layer of defense. Conditional access evaluates signals such as user location, device type, risk level, and other contextual factors to automate access decisions. For example, you can require multi-factor authentication, MFA, for users logging in from unfamiliar locations or entirely block access from untrusted devices. This provides an additional safeguard even in cases where permissions might be too broad. Let's say someone with elevated permissions inadvertently logs in on an untrusted device while traveling. A conditional access policy could immediately restrict their access or require additional identity verification, ensuring the organization's systems remain protected. This added layer helps minimize the risk associated with misassigning roles by enforcing granular access controls based on real-time circumstances. Conditional access is particularly effective when applied alongside the principle of least privilege. It acts as a second gate, ensuring that even if a user's role grants them certain permissions, those permissions can only be exercised under trustworthy conditions. For instance, a user with the security administrator role might only be allowed to perform actions if they log in on a company-managed device within a specific geographic region. These policies allow organizations to be more flexible and responsive without compromising security, reducing the overall impact of improper role assignments. Another preventive measure is understanding the distinction between role categories and using them effectively. Microsoft Entra roles are categorized into three broad types: Microsoft Entra-specific roles, service-specific roles, and cross-service roles. Each category is designed for specific purposes, and mismanaging roles across these categories can lead to unnecessary permission overlap. For instance, assigning a cross-service role that grants permissions to multiple services when a user's responsibilities are limited to one service creates gaps in control. Think of a database analyst being unnecessarily given cross-service permissions covering email and file storage. This not only introduces risks, but also creates unnecessary complexity in the permission structure, making errors more likely and management more difficult. Improper assignments also create confusion. When roles aren't clearly scoped to their intended purpose, users may not understand what actions they're authorized to perform. This can result in hesitancy or mistakes. For example, an employee with access to sensitive configurations may alter a setting incorrectly out of uncertainty, thinking it's part of their role. These errors can have cascading effects, disrupting business processes, or leaving data unsecured. At the same time, IT administrators may spend additional time fielding questions or dealing with unnecessary help desk requests from users who have access but don't know how to use it effectively. The risks associated with improper role assignments all point to one conclusion: organizations need to approach access control deliberately and with structure. Role assignments should always begin with a clear understanding of the user's actual responsibilities and be scoped as tightly as possible. By combining tools like conditional access with proper role categorization and scoping, organizations can offset many of the risks we've discussed. Ultimately, improper role assignments compromise both security and productivity. They increase your attack surface, disrupt critical operations, and create administrative headaches. The only way to mitigate these risks is to approach role management with care, ensuring permissions are tailored to job tasks and regularly reviewed for alignment with the principle of least privilege. So, how can we ensure role assignments stay secure? Let's talk audits next. Auditing and reviewing role assignments. Keeping roles secure over time requires more than assigning them correctly at the beginning. Organizations must perform regular reviews to ensure that users have only the access they currently need, not what they needed months or years ago. This is critical for maintaining compliance with the principle of least privilege, which is key to reducing an organization's attack surface. However, staying on top of roles can be challenging, especially for larger organizations where users frequently move between teams, change responsibilities, or require new types of access. Without a way to keep track of these changes, permissions can quickly become outdated or misaligned with actual responsibilities. This is where auditing and reviewing role assignments come into play. Regularly conducting audits ensures that access remains appropriate, secure, and compliant with both internal policies and external regulations. The goal is to identify and address issues such as over-permissioning, unnecessary access, or users retaining roles they no longer need. For example, when an employee changes departments, the permissions they held in their previous role should be revoked immediately. Failing to remove these permissions leaves the organization vulnerable, allowing users to access resources that no longer align with their responsibilities. Microsoft Entra makes role auditing easier with tools like access reviews. These reviews provide a systematic way to validate who has access to what and whether those permissions are still required. Access reviews are particularly valuable for managing things like group memberships, application access, and role assignments. By periodically verifying access, organizations can remove unnecessary permissions proactively. Consider a scenario where a user was temporarily added to a project group but remains in the group long after the project is completed. An access review helps identify this and allows the organization to revoke their membership, preventing unnecessary access to resources tied to that group. Access reviews can be customized to run on a recurring schedule, such as monthly or quarterly, which helps to automate part of the process. Designated reviewers, whether they are managers, IT administrators, or external auditors, receive notifications prompting them to review role assignments. The tool even provides intelligent recommendations to streamline decision-making. For instance, if a user has not actively used their assigned role in a set period, the system may recommend revoking access. These features reduce the manual effort involved while improving the accuracy of role management. Upon completing a review, changes can either be applied manually by the organization or automatically, depending on the configuration. This flexibility helps maintain an up-to-date access structure while decreasing operational overhead. Beyond access reviews, reporting features in Microsoft Entra play a crucial role in keeping track of role assignments and activations. These reports provide administrators with a detailed view of who has access to which resources and when those permissions were last used. For example, organizations can generate reports showing all users assigned a specific role, along with details like the scope of their access. This level of visibility is critical for maintaining accountability, as it helps IT teams identify discrepancies and implement corrections efficiently. Another powerful feature for securing role assignments is Privileged Identity Management (PIM). PIM is designed to reduce the likelihood of unauthorized access by enforcing stricter controls for privileged roles. It does this by introducing just-in-time JIT access, meaning users gain access to sensitive roles only when they need it and for a limited time. For instance, an administrator might request access to the global administrator role to perform a specific task, and PIM can grant this access for a set duration, perhaps a few hours, before automatically revoking it. This reduces the risk of misuse by limiting exposure to privileged permissions. Additionally, PM provides a comprehensive audit trail for all role assignments and activations. Over a rolling 30-day period, organizations can view detailed records of who has been assigned to privileged roles, when those roles were activated, and for how long. For example, if an auditor needs to confirm that only authorized personnel activated the security administrator role, PM's logs provide the necessary evidence. This auditability is critical for meeting compliance requirements and ensuring transparency in how privileged roles are managed. Let's consider a practical application. Imagine a scenario where a user assigned to the application administrator role consistently activates permissions to change application configurations, even though they are no longer responsible for that task. With PIM's auditing features, administrators can identify this behavior and take corrective action, such as revoking the role or redesigning access policies. Similarly, if a role is being activated during unusual hours or from unexpected locations, the activity can signal potential misuse or a compromised account. In both cases, the visibility provided by PM is instrumental in detecting and addressing security threats before they escalate. One challenge that organizations often face is ensuring timely updates to permissions as users' responsibilities change. It's easy for outdated permissions to accumulate when employees switch teams, complete projects, or leave the organization. This is why integrating role assignments with comprehensive reviews is so important. Access reviews can help flag inactive accounts or overly broad permissions, while PIM can reduce reliance on permanent privileged access by ensuring that elevated permissions are temporary and specific to the task at hand. Additionally, PM's ability to provide just enough access aligns perfectly with the principle of least privilege. This means granting specific role-based permissions for only as long as necessary. For example, instead of leaving finance staff permanently assigned to elevated permissions during an audit period, they can request temporary access through PIM. Once the audit is complete, their additional permissions are automatically removed. This approach minimizes long-term exposure to sensitive roles while still allowing work to proceed efficiently. Microsoft Entra's auditing capabilities extend beyond individual tools like access reviews and PIM. The platform also offers reporting features that enable organizations to monitor and analyze trends in how roles are assigned and used over time. For example, administrators can track how often certain roles are activated and whether the activations align with normal business operations. If a pattern emerges that doesn't match expectations, such as unexpectedly frequent activations of sensitive roles, it may indicate a need to investigate further. These reporting features not only support day-to-day security management, but also provide the evidence needed to satisfy auditors during compliance checks. Another important aspect of auditing is understanding how long certain permissions have gone unused. Microsoft Entra's reporting features can identify roles that haven't been activated in weeks or months. For example, a user who was initially given access to manage an application might no longer use those permissions after handing off responsibility to another team member. By identifying and removing unused roles, organizations reduce unnecessary access and improve overall security. This practice, combined with tools like PIM and access reviews, creates a layered approach to role management that strengthens the organization's security posture while remaining manageable. To summarize, auditing and reviewing role assignments is a core part of maintaining security and compliance in Microsoft Entra environments. Tools like access reviews ensure that permissions stay aligned with user responsibilities, while features like PIM introduce additional layers of control for privileged roles. Reporting capabilities further enhance visibility, allowing organizations to track and adjust access settings as needed. Together, these tools provide the structure and flexibility needed to enforce least privilege at scale. The takeaway here is that regular audits aren't an optional best practice. They're essential for reducing risks and ensuring that your organization stays compliant and secure. Whether it's removing unnecessary access, limiting exposure to sensitive roles, or improving accountability through detailed audit logs. Auditing is the backbone of effective access management. Without it, organizations expose themselves to unnecessary risks, making it harder to respond to evolving security challenges. Let's wrap up by looking at why this knowledge is essential for the SC900 exam and beyond. Mastering Microsoft Entra roles isn't just about acing the SC900 exam, it's about protecting your organization. By implementing role-based access control, RBAC, and adhering to the principle of least privilege, you ensure that users only have the access they need, reducing security risks. Regular audits and reviews, like those offered through access reviews, help maintain this balance over time by mitigating excessive or misaligned permissions. Now it's your turn to put these principles into action. Explore your Microsoft Entra portal and practice assigning roles thoughtfully. In the next part of this series, we'll dive into conditional access. Don't miss it.